Welcome to Maverick, a program specially designed to be able to showcase wonderful life and work of CEOs and C-suite professionals. Today we have with us Ramesh Schaffter, MD, Group's CEO of Janashakthi Group of Companies. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you as well. Working for 25 years for various corporates, we thought, Ramesh, of inviting some of the CEOs that we've admired and we've watched from afar. We've had the opportunity and the privilege of working and serving for. So to invite you was one of those very important moments for us as an organization. We are very, very happy that you're here with us.
I'm happy to be here.
One of the questions that I constantly ask most of the CEOs that sit with us, because the program is about showcasing their life, I asked them about, tell us something about themselves when they were young, whether that may be when you were a toddler, whether you were naughty, whether you were a musical, whether you were a sports person when you were small. Take us through maybe your life, maybe the life you were brought up in Madras, whatever that may be. Tell us about little young Ramesh.
So at the age of 3, I had to leave Sri Lanka and go off to India. And at that time, as a child, I never appreciated what India was. I just missed home and friends and neighbors and Sri Lanka as a whole. And growing up, all our pleasant memories were in Sri Lanka. Whether it was going to golf face, going to the zoo, going to Trincomalee on a holiday once a year, those were the sort of memories that we held on to. And so compared to that, India was a struggle. Madras in the 70s and then later on through the 80s was what we might call a backward place. Why? Because our yardstick was on what was there available, and India was a closed economy. Sri Lanka in 77 liberalized and seemed to be having all the goodies that young people liked, and India had none of that. So it was a tough life. Looking back, the standard of education was excellent. You generally get through O-levels at the age of 15 and A-levels at the age of 17. At 20, you come out of university with a degree. If you want a master's, it's 21 or 22, and you start your career very young. In Sri Lanka, on the contrary, you leave school at 19 and sometimes hang around till you're 20. So you're leaving school in Sri Lanka when in India you're graduating. The flip side of it is that you don't have the colleges like you do here. You don't have the wide range of sports activities and extracurriculars, and you really missed out on that. In fact, a curious tale, for a variety of reasons, we went through an accelerated study, and by the age of 16 I had finished my A-levels, and I tried to convince my father, who was a Thomian, that I should go into St. Thomas's College at the age of 16 and resit A-levels. And because of course there was the Sinhala and Tamil only policy, I convinced him, or tried to convince him, that I should take logic, English literature and French, which sadly he refused to allow. He thought it made a mockery of the school, and so I missed out on representing the college, perhaps at sport or anything else.
Okay.
And that is perhaps the one regret of my life.
Okay. Well, being a Thomian myself and a third generation, I think your sons also went to St. Thomas's.
Yes, when my sons were born, English medium had still not been introduced, and my wife is from a Sinhala medium school, and I of course spoke Tamil, but neither of us was very competent in the language, and so we have these debates that many families have, and I gave a simple ruling. I said it doesn't matter if he gets 8 Fs, but he is going to St. Thomas's. And so it was that he was fortunate they had English medium while he was there, they introduced it, and now my second son is also going through St. Thomas's College. He is now in year 8, and I am very pleased at that.
Okay.
So my father was a Thomian, we skipped a generation. My brother's son is a Thomian, my 2 sons are Thomians. And a curious fact, my grandfather taught at the school for 25 years. He actually moved, he was one of those who moved with the school from Muttuwal to Mount. And so he had a long stint at the college. So our heart is there.
Absolutely. Once a Thomian, yeah, always. Where did cricket come into play?
Oh, cricket came in very early. My father was an absentee father, so we grew up on legends of his cricketing exploits as a Thomian cricketer and captain and fast bowler. And so my older brother Prakash, myself, followed in that path naturally. And from a very young age, we considered ourselves fast bowlers. And we played a lot of cricket. We were fortunate that in India we lived inside the YMCA compound. There was a cricket ground there. As much time as possible we played cricket. We went on to play cricket in England. And rather disappointingly, my two brothers played first class cricket. I am the only one in the family not to have played first class cricket. So cricket was very much a part of our lives.
So moving on, your work career?
So work started very young. In some ways, if I look at my life from a pessimistic perspective, I left school at 14. We were displaced citizens. I don't like to use the word refugees. But we ended up in England at a very young age. I was 17 when I landed in England. By the time I was 17 and a half, we were doing holiday work. I like to say my first job was in communications. In reality, it was as a postal assistant, putting in letters and posting it. But in that part of the world, you work from a very young age. And we worked in the holidays, my sister, my brothers, myself. And it also teaches you the value of things. So we worked right through the time that I studied CIMA, and I was fortunate I graduated fairly young. And I started a full-time working career when I was 19 and a half. And I haven't stopped. So now I'm coming up to 34 years just gone, and it's been a long career.
Your father would be called the father of insurance in Sri Lanka, if I may call it that. And there may be many things that you've learned from him, probably still do. I think he worked till his 90th birthday, or still does.
Oh, he's 93 and still working.
Yeah. How do you learn from him, or do you learn from his ways of doing things?
So there's some amazing lessons to learn from my father's life, and one would be that he empowered children very young. My brother and my sister actually went and worked half a day when my sister was 14 and a half and my brother was 15 and a half. And he empowered us in terms of giving us responsibility from an extremely young age. He also founded Kotmale, which is not a very well known fact. So from the age of 16, we used to work in stalls and things like that, selling cheese and whatever. So empowering young people and giving us responsibility at a very young age was something that he did, and something that I tried to do. The second, for him, age is only a number. And he is 93 and still as active as he ever was. Very disciplined. We fail on that front. Sometimes we are coming home and he is waking up for the day. But there's a lot in his style of work and the dynamism that he shows, which is an example to anybody. We used to make jokes. He started Janashakthi at the age of 64. Most people retired at 55 in those days. It's only now changed to 60. So he founded the company at 64, and he served as MD until he was 75. And that is amazing when you look at it simply from a point of view of somebody at 64 starting a business, driving that business, driving growth. And so we used to make jokes that Janashakthi was a young, dynamic company, that we were young and he was dynamic. And so it's amazing. To have worked alongside him, to keep pace with him is not easy. Even when you walk, he walks faster than everyone. So you literally have to keep pace with him. And it's been a great example. But he also empowered us from a young age. And so even from a very young age, he gave us responsibility and said, you take over and you do this or you do that. And Janashakthi Group today is not what it was 20 years ago. It's not an insurance company alone. It's got a lot more than that. And so today we are a financial services conglomerate. We're looking at expanding into other non-financial service areas. But we have not just insurance, but First Capital and Orient Finance in the NBFI area. And we try to bring some of those characteristics. So, what are the characteristics that differentiate my father from the rest of the pack? Innovation, creativity, the desire to embrace technology. So, an example is that at the age of 85 or 88 or something, he sends my daughter a message saying, I'd like you to teach me how to use WhatsApp and Viber and whatever else. Never too old to learn, and never too old to embrace the latest in technology. And what differentiated Janashakthi in the early days was the embracing of technology, and that is something that is ingrained in us now because of that.
Great lessons to learn, because now in this era when we coach people and train people, you will find a 35-year-old or a 40-year-old saying, now that our days are over and we are now very old, and they continue with the sentence. And here's a person, and as Sri Lankans we rather get a quotation from KFC, how they formed the company at their 50s and 60s, as opposed to we have our own legend right here in Sri Lanka.
Absolutely.
And must have been a great feeling to have a dad.
Oh, it is, and not just insurance. He's called the father of insurance in Sri Lanka, and it's not just that. He's had multiple careers. He had an outstanding school career, represented the country in hockey and cricket, one of the few double internationals. And while doing all that, and while playing cricket into his 30s, he was an administrator, he was a selector in cricket, he was a selector in hockey, he was on the National Olympic Committee, he was the first Sri Lankan president of mercantile cricket, he was manager of the Sri Lankan cricket team on so many occasions, he was manager in their first tour of India, he was manager when Sanath Jayasuriya and Murali made their debut in the national scene. He was manager once more when Sangakkara debuted. So, he's had a long career in multiple fields, and in the process of all that he still took time to study. Wasn't easy, there were no classes, he studied in the bus while going to work and such things, and qualified. So, one of the earliest to qualify in insurance. So, absolutely amazing role model in multiple facets of life.
And when you take that same example, I don't know whether it applies to you also, because when I read up on more about you, Ramesh, I find that you're in so many different things. To start off with, you're an ordained priest.
I am, yes, guilty as charged.
How did that come about?
So, I think there's three facets to every human being in terms of what they do. There is the social, family, friends network. That's the relationships that you form. Then there is the profession and your work. Then in many cases, there's also the faith side of it, the spiritual side of it. And in actual fact, I had a lot of the first and second and very little of the third, until I had an experience of God and things got turned around, and it meant that then I started focusing a lot more on the spiritual side. And this was a natural progression. So, I was a preacher for about 10 years before I got ordained, and it's about 4 years since I was ordained. And I think that it is one facet of a three-sided life that every individual has. It doesn't mean that what I do works for everyone, but it means that for me, that is the work life and service balance that I have.
It's given you meaning and purpose in a different kind of way.
Oh yes, and not just meaning and purpose, it's given a lot of joy.
That's important.
And that joy comes from multiple things. So, sometimes just serving others is also a source of joy. Whoever that is, just helping out someone, guiding someone. You're a coach. When you coach someone, doesn't it give you joy?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the same thing. So, I mentor, I counsel, I do all of that. And all of that is a source of great joy and satisfaction.
A lot of merit in that. And then you co-founded a cable TV company.
Well, it's part of the spiritual side, because I was led along with my wife, who also serves in different ways. We co-founded Swarga TV, which is a Christian TV channel. It runs on Dialogue TV and on other direct-to-home networks. We also parallelly started something called the Christian Arts Foundation, which promotes music and drama and supports that in terms of singing and choral performances and whatever else. So it's something that we felt led to do and we get a lot of joy doing.
Sure. I always ask CEOs when I meet them, what's your bucket list, if there was such a thing?
Oh, my bucket is full. I seem to be doing everything that I don't want to do, even though I've done so many things I like to do.
Okay.
So I think people say you only live once, but that's not really true. I read somewhere that you live every day. And so every day is a new day, and every day is a day to do something different. So I have had a varied life in terms of what I've done. I've always done about 3 or 4 jobs. It's never been one job. And so what I do like to do, I do like to watch cricket. I spent time going to Karachi, to Lahore to watch the 1996 World Cup, went to England and followed the World Cup for 7 weeks in 99, went to Barbados for the 2007 World Cup, and now I hardly seem to find time. And that's something I like to pick up again. I've coached a little, I've managed a little, I've been involved in Tamil Union cricket for about 10 years as Secretary of Cricket and Chairman of Cricket, finally as President of the club. Several test players have come through the ranks while I was there, and that is something I'd like to give back a little more. Traveling is something I really enjoy. And traveling, I believe Sri Lanka is one of the most beautiful places to travel. So I organized something I call Round the Pearl, but because of lack of time, we did Round the Pearl 1, which was do half. And I'm actually working on Round the Pearl 2, which is to do the other half. Okay. So that's something I like. I think Sri Lanka has so much to see. And I really love traveling here as well as overseas, obviously, but I think there's a lot to see here.
And when I sit next to you and think of the color in life and tapestry that you've lived, I so want to ask you about what advice you would give some of the CEOs, C-suites, chairmen. Why? Because not all of them perhaps have a blended happy life. It's sometimes they say lonely at the top. It doesn't need to be. What are your thoughts on what we can help them with?
You asked me 3 questions in one, Niroshan. So I don't say that I've got it all together perfectly, but I think that one thing I learned from my father is discipline, and that discipline comes down to time management. And most people would say, I don't have time. Time is what you make, and you need to decide what is important and what's going to take your time. So I have a simple rule in life: I don't do anything someone else can do. Because there's some things that only Ramesh can do and others can't do. So I pass on or delegate whatever that I can, so that it frees me up to do the things that I can do. So even today, I handle multiple facets of not just the business, but life in general and various things. I think it's plugging those in. And if I don't go to the gym, let me be candid enough to admit that it's because of laziness and not lack of time. Too many people will tell you, oh, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. Striking a work-life balance is absolutely paramount. And that's one of the things that I've really focused on in the last 10 to 15 years. Why? Because you have to ask yourself, why are you doing what you do? Many people will tell you they're doing it for their children, they're doing it for their families, and in pursuing these things, they end up losing their children and their families. And then you ask yourself, what was it all for? So trying to balance that, trying to be available for your children when they need them. Because I have this very simple saying, if you're not there when I need you, I don't need you. And so I had given my youngest son, even when he was 3, 4 years old, I'd given him my mobile number, and I told him, anytime you need to contact me, you can call me. It did not matter if I was at a board meeting or anything else. And he would, for his part, first call and say, are you busy? Are you okay to talk? But when my son is in distress and wants to contact me, if I am not available, he does not need me. I think it's about prioritizing. And so you have ways to manage that. You can give a special ringtone, you can bypass your do not disturbs and still take the calls that matter. There's always a call that matters. So, I think that has to be done. So, you don't lose sight of what your life is and what brings you joy. For me, going home in the evening is the greatest joy. I did not grow up here. So, unfortunately, I do not have a network of friends, I do not hang around the clubs having a drink, etc. So, I spend a lot of family time anyway. But more than just spending family time, we purposefully do family stuff. And I think that is important. Conversation, communication, absolutely important.
Absolutely. Some of the CEOs that I work with consciously make that effort and are able to live very enriched lives. But some of them struggle, and like you said, they blame it on time, or they postpone it. Maybe after this merger, maybe after this particular time I'll get a new CEO and hand it over. But that time never comes, and you wake up for that day. For young business entrepreneurs, from your experience, what can you share and how can you help them to enrich themselves?
You are only limited by your dreams, because if you pursue something, and I am going not just from my father's experience, I know that not everyone can found a business of that magnitude at the age of 64. Not everyone can keep running in an executive role till 75 and then keep running on a board role and such things for much later, years later. But what is limiting you? It is only your own imagination, it is only your own creativity, it is only your own lack of drive. Anything is possible. So, I left the UK and came back to Sri Lanka in 1992 to a relatively small family business. And we had an idea of where we wanted to get to. Perhaps we have not yet got there, but our reality at that time and where we are today are completely different. And did we do all this great planning to get there? No. I believe that right action will reap the right rewards.
Sure.
So, you just keep doing what you have to do as best as you can, and it can't go wrong every day. It will go right. And when you get to one platform, you climb another ladder, and then you get to another platform and you climb another ladder. And that is how it is. It is not one continuous climb, it is a marathon. So, you need to catch your breath at times and you keep going. So, I reached 50 in 2020 and I had just done just over 30 years. And at that time the retirement age was 55. So, was I thinking next 5 years? No, I was thinking next 30 years. And though I had not mapped out anything in my childhood, it was a series of accidents and you stumble along and opportunity comes and you keep going. Now, where we are, we actually got a facilitator to go through what we would do in the next 5 years and the next 10 years and the next 20 years. So, that we have some sort of a map of what we would be doing with our time, what we would be doing with our families, what we would be doing in other areas. So, that we have some guideline, because life does not end at 50 or 60. In fact, it is getting far more exciting now, because some of the responsibilities and whatever that you have as a young person, you do not have when you are hitting this age. You have a little more freedom, and I think that Sri Lankans can. I think today the environment, and I am not talking about today's economic environment, I mean today the environment compared to 30 years ago is a lot easier to operate in. The opportunities are huge for entrepreneurs. But to the entrepreneur, what I would say is, if you are convinced of something, forge ahead. Do not listen to the naysayers, because there will be enough people to say, do not try to be too smart, do not try to do this, it will never work out, you are too young, you are too old, whatever. You have to have self-belief first, because if you do not believe in yourself, no one else will.
Yeah.
And I think that what we lack as a nation is self-belief. Because even from our education system, we are told, do not try to be too smart, do not try to think too much, you just do what I say, stay within the box. And you look at internationally, Sri Lankans are flourishing, and that is because they are not confined to that box. And I think we have the innate talents to do that, we just need the opportunity. So, with entrepreneurship, I think Sri Lanka has a nation of entrepreneurs who just have not been given that push, they haven't been given that encouragement, and they haven't been told you can achieve.
It's amazing that I myself have two, twins. They're very young, they're 4.5. I look at them as a new lease on life for me, being an older dad, much older dad. So it's never too late, huh?
It's never too late. So, I have 11 years between my number 3 and number 4, and that was and still is a new lease in life. I recommend it to anyone.
Yeah.
Because it changed the whole family dynamic with 3 older children, and then I have 4, by the way.
Okay.
So, 3 older children and then one who was a new arrival.
Okay.
16 years between number 1 and number 4.
Okay.
And it's transformed the family dynamic where all 5 of us who are adults, and I tell my youngest one, I have only 1 child. And he says, really? I said, yes, the others 3 are adults. You're my only child. Feels very special. But he's the only child for all 5 of us.
Okay.
And it's great fun.
What
And
a
I think there's
wonderful way of
nothing
looking.
greater than a loving family.
Oh, yes. I think the last time I met you, I met the 3 of you with a psychometric test, and we had a 360 and a psychometric test discussion. And however, permit me to ask this, and we can probably, you can answer the way you'd like to. When I think about life and loss, I've had 3 CEOs that I coach with, including Mr. Hanif, who actually spoke about his loss, in this segment. As only a brother, how have you dealt with your loss in the family side?
How are we dealing with it even today? Because it's not even closed yet. There's no closure. 7 months have passed, and we're still having an open wound that is being dug up. As you probably know, there's been a lot of media coverage, and they've gone through medical experts and all of that. So, coping with it hasn't yet even begun.
Okay.
And particularly in the case of my brother Dinesh and myself, we were in the same school for his entire school career. We went to school together, we came back together, we went most of the sports teams together, we shared a room together, we went to England to study CIMA together, we were in the same class there together, passed out together, and we were extremely close, both in terms of being brothers and sharing and caring, and more than the other siblings, I had lived entirely with him. And that sort of thing is very difficult, because we both think alike. Even in the family, there are 4 of us, and there's my older brother and sister who are on the one side in terms of their thought process, their characteristics and all of that. They take after my mother more. And my younger brother Dinesh and I on the other side, where we take after my father a lot more. So, we were both creative, we were both leading acquisitions, and if you look at the history of our group, we have done so many acquisitions. And funny story, 2 funny stories. When Kelsey Holmes was actually, when they were looking at divestment, it turned out that Dinesh was negotiating through one person and I was negotiating on another side through another person, without knowing that both of us were trying to get into the same thing for the same group.
Okay.
And the second thing, it repeated itself when a guy comes and says, you know, Macha, your brother is also talking to me on this side about this, and you're talking to me now about this. So, our thought process was so similar.
Okay.
And from a business perspective, I could bounce off any ideas from him, because he was also a finance person, youngest SEMA grad in the world at that time, and very creative financially in terms of thinking out of the box. He was engaging in swap transactions 20 years ago, and to date now hardly anyone does it, and was always looking at new ways to do things. Together we built the group in some ways, because he and I led the acquisitions, he and I led the reverse takeovers. So, Kotmale we listed by reversing it into Lambretta, that is why it has the stock code LAMB. And First Capital, which is a very large company today, was reversed into Central Finance Venture Fund. That's why it has the stock code CFVF.
Okay.
So even in the work environment, I'm sometimes picking up the phone to bounce off an idea and I have to stop myself. So it's very difficult in multiple ways. We hope that justice will prevail.
Yeah.
We trust God to deliver justice. So
Of course.
we wait on
of
Him
course,
for that.
Of course. The question was asked as a more of a brother and a family, because the healing process for many sometimes is hard to talk to and work with. And I wanted to share this with the senior people because you've actually gone through it, and that's fantastic that you found that friendship and that camaraderie within.
Oh, absolutely.
relationship.
Anyway, as a family, we're exceptionally close. Partly because I mentioned at the start, my father was an absentee father. Why? Because my mother and the four of us were brought up in India, and my father used to travel up and down. And my mother is a very strong lady. Everyone knows my father, but my mother is the one who's molded us.
Okay.
And she's extremely strong, extremely capable. And she brought up 4 children who were 7 years and below, all by herself in a foreign country. And got us into school, saw to our studies, would be very strict. Her household runs like clockwork. So as far as my father is concerned, creative and innovative, and my mother was disciplined and regimented, and she was the administrator in the family.
Right.
And it takes a team like that. So we grew up very close. We shared a room. When we were kids, all of us were in the same room. And then our study room had 4 tables in 4 corners, and my mother sitting in the middle and making sure we study. So we grew up like that. And when you grow up in a foreign land like that, you automatically become close because you're on your own in some ways. And that happened even when we went into the UK for studies, higher studies.
Right.
So yes, and caring, sharing, it's been part of our DNA, shall I say.
Wonderful.
And even the next generation is extremely close, and that makes it's a double-edged sword. It makes it so much harder because even the next gen is suffering from the loss and struggling to cope, and until there's some closure, the healing process itself cannot begin.
Sure. A lot of blessings from our side. He was a very nice person. I've met him for only 2.5 hours of individual one-to-one conversation, and I will always remember what a candid conversation we were able to have. Moving on, what's next for Janashakthi in the days ahead?
Oh, there's lots of excitement. We got delayed slightly in our strategic plans because of the economic crisis, but we're working on a fundraising. We're working on deleveraging. We're actively now working on mergers and acquisitions once more. We're optimistic. We'll never have perfect scenario.
Yeah.
You have opportunities in this crisis, and that's what we're doing. We're having multiple conversations right now because we've set our goals very clearly, our strategic direction, and that is to go beyond financial services. We've identified certain sectors we'd like to be in. Perhaps 4 sectors, so that we have some sort of diversification. We've also identified the need to broad-base capital. We've already moved to shared services and such things from a parent level.
Sure.
Our rebranding of Janashakthi Group, so that we become a sought-after employer and such things. Adopted values that will then get established across the board and across the companies that we operate in, so that there's a common culture. And we are thinking big things. So listing is on the cards as soon as things settle down. We were planning a listing for this year when there was no crisis. So we've got delayed. But that doesn't matter. These obstacles come on every road.
Absolutely.
Our destination does not change. And so we are trying to position ourselves as one of the leading conglomerates in this country. And that is not a 1-year journey, a 2-year journey. It's a 10-year journey. And so we are committed to that 10-year journey. And we will plod along. Maybe we are not moved as fast in this last year, but we will catch up for the lost time.
Of course you will. If I was not mistaken, I would have said you're anyway already there as one of the most respected conglomerates.
Yes, I guess so. But we've also set a target for ourselves to be amongst the top 10 in the stock market.
Okay.
It's not driven by hubris, but driven as a goal to work towards. So, when you reach the top 10, you know you are of a certain size and scale and whatever else, but of course, we want to get there, taking along with us the values that we stand for, that my father stood for, and what we have now captured and built into the system.
Yes.
And that covers things like honesty and integrity and respect and all of those things, which we believe can impact the rest of the nation.
Sure.
We have set up the Janashakthi Foundation in the last year or two, and we have been doing some work with underprivileged societies. We have been doing something with the hospitals during COVID, and we come alongside the need that we see. So, we have identified 3 pillars: sport, of course, because we love sport, and I think everyone should really pay some time or spend some time on sport. Education, because education is a very foundation for any family and any child. And of course, community. So, those are the 3 pillars that we are trying to work in through the Janashakthi Foundation, giving back to society in some way, encouraging our staff to also get involved with service, because as I told you at the beginning, there is a joy in serving others, and they need to discover that joy, because it is not about me, myself and I, it is not about getting my fat paycheck and going home and being happy with my family. There are others who can do with a helping hand, and right now we are doing a feeding project. Because you know the amount of starvation today, you know that people are not getting balanced meals, they are not getting nutritious meals. So, we are trying to do something to help those communities.
Wonderful. Probably the last question I would ask you is that I have great faith in family businesses. When I say family businesses, some businesses have now become conglomerates and have listed companies and all that, but there is a familyness in the organization. Now, many talk about, okay, family businesses don't go beyond the 3rd generation. There are many pluses and minuses people discuss. For people who are leaders of family businesses, moving towards building the business to a conglomerate, what kind of advice could you give family business, medium to small, medium family business owners in this country?
So, I think there has to be a commitment. So, we have discussed it as the next generation. We have a commitment to growing it. We have a commitment to passing on the baton. So, we have in fact developed a system by which they can enter, go through some training, because you get family businesses and family businesses, but Janashakthi has been, although family controlled, very professionally run. All of the companies, even the unlisted one, have a minimum of majority of non-executive directors, independent chairman, and we function like a listed company. So, in that background, we have set up a formal process for next gen to enter, so that the passing of the baton will be merited, not just nepotism. Business units are even now run by CEOs who are there on merit. And if a family member needs to come in and run a business or participate in a business, they need to get there on merit. The pathway is fast tracked. They have minimum education qualifications required, and then there is a minimum training program. More than that, I think it is important that they catch the vision. I told you about this 10-year journey, and they need to catch that vision. And if they catch that vision, whatever that vision is for a business, whether it is small and medium sized, whether it is mid range, whether it is large, as long as they catch the vision that is handed down to them, they will continue in that path. Because what is said about family business? First generation entrepreneur will build the business, the second generation will drive the business, the third one will just hold it, and the fourth generation has squandered it. And you need to set controls in place if you do not want that, and many businesses do that, and we have gone through that ourselves in the last 3 years, especially with COVID. We had to plan for the future, and so we have a plan, and the family knows there is a family charter. If you want to come into the business, this is the path. If you want to exit from any potential inheritance, this is the path, so that your exit does not scuttle the entire journey. The journey will continue. And it can be with, in the next gen we have 13 children, but it can be with 1, 2, 5, 7, it does not matter. The journey will continue. And that is what's important, that the legacy is preserved. And yes, I do agree with you, many family businesses have squandered the legacy. They don't know the blood, sweat and tears that have gone into building something, and very often they want to just grab hold of it and live the life. But that's something that we hope that we can pass on to the next gen. We already have 3 next gen family members in the business, training in various ways, and we hope that they or more of them would actually get involved and then be part of the business going forward, so that we can gracefully pass on the baton, just as my father did to the 4 of us. And that is something that's necessary. You need to also give them that path, but also sell them the vision, so that they carry that legacy forward, which is absolutely important. And you see that with some family business even in Sri Lanka, extremely solid, extremely good to see the legacy carried on. And that's what you're doing. You're not doing business to earn money, you're building something. And that's what it's all about.
Such a lovely couple of questions covered within this session. A lot of good advice. Ramesh, thank you so much for the time that you spent with us. It's been fantastic. And do come back and have a chat to us when the growth patterns are working. We'd love to have you back. Thank you very much for your time.
Keep a track of it and see it unfolding. I know it will.
I will.
It will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Niroshan, and all the best.
All the best.